This is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so this episode introduces us to a new character, and he's kind of interesting. So, yeah, the episode, if you can't tell by the name of the episode, we're maybe or maybe not introduced to an alien in this episode, which is just barely possible in the world of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, it starts off with Yoshihiro Kira looking for a new victim to make into a stand user with his bow and arrow. And it eventually picks a young man, and he decides to go throw his arrow at the young man, realizes too late that the arrow isn't going to work on him because for whatever reason the arrow just kind of bounces off the man's neck instead of actually piercing him, and just kind of flies into the bushes. And Yoshihiro is a little bit confused, and the man notices the small cut where the arrow hit him, and just kind of moves on with his day. Meanwhile, Jotaro is meeting with the Speedwagon Foundation member, and they're having a bit of a tough time finding a lead on Yoshikage Kira's whereabouts and what his new identity is. With the Speedwagon Foundation member even outright stating that Yoshikage has covered up his tracks a little bit too well, and it's making it kind of difficult to track him, but they do need to find him soon because there's going to be a bunch of tourists flooding into Morio, and he's most likely going to try and kill somebody soon because he's likely not going to be able to sit still for very long. And sure enough, we see exactly that. Yoshikage Kira, disguised as Kawajiri, he's having a bit of a rough go of it, definitely. He's seeing all the new tourists that are wandering around, which of course includes a bunch of beautiful women, and he can't help but he's having a hard time suppressing his murderous urges as his fingernails grow exponentially long. But while he's in there, he's also trying to practice Kasaku Kawajiri's handwriting so that he can perfectly mimic his handwriting, which he proclaims he hasn't done perfectly yet. And as he's working on that, Shinobu actually walks into the room, and he quickly covers up what he was doing, making it seem like he was just reading a book. But she merely remarks that should have been obvious, and then states that she's brought him some tea, and that he doesn't have to drink it if he doesn't want to, but that she would appreciate it if he did. And as a kind gesture, he does. So he drinks her tea, which causes her to become ecstatic, and then she notices what time it is and decides to basically undress in front of Yoshikage Kira because she thinks that Kira is her husband, even though he's not. And we've already established that Kira's having a bit of a hard time suppressing his urges, and even goes to strangle Shinobu, but he ultimately decides against it and accidentally undoes the buttons on the back of her dress, which causes her to become surprised, and he openly apologizes for startling her, which makes her think it was a sexual advance, and she becomes smitten with him, as it were. And I'm assuming of both of them, there's actually a hidden camera hidden in the ceiling, and it's unclear what the camera is going to represent at this time, but clearly it's a thing. Clearly somebody set up something in the house, and might catch Yoshikage Kira in the act. We don't know. But in any case, shortly after this event, Josuke and Okuyasu were heading to school, and they discover a massive crop circle in a field where they walk. And naturally, Josuke and Okuyasu go to investigate it, and then notice that there's a man sleeping in the middle of the field, in the middle of the crop circle. And they go to investigate him and uncover him. And they notice that the chink in his neck, and try to wake him up, seeing if he will actually respond. And he does in a rather unnatural way, and it's revealed that it's actually the man from when Yoshihiro tried to create a stand user. And he gets up in a rather unnatural way. It's kind of hard to describe. It's just kind of like he doesn't really stand up. He just kind of swivels on his heels and stands up that way. It's very weird, very unusual. At which point the young man asks where he is, And Josuke and Okuyasu openly remark that that he's in the middle of Morio and that he took a nap in the middle of a crop circle, which he then follows up by asking if he's still on Earth, and points out that he's from the Magellanic Cloud system and that he came there to see if Earth was a nice home, and then he points out that he fell asleep, and well, long story short, he took a nap in the middle of a crop circle. And naturally, Josuke and Okuyasu begin laughing this off. They fall over, double over laughing, and they can't help but find it funny because they point out, as it points out, as they're both quick to point out, the fact of the matter is that this guy is just kind of sleeping in the middle of a crop circle for no apparent reason, and they assume it was all some sort of elaborate prank, pointing out that he was just kind of most likely just kind of waiting for somebody to find him and locate him and think he was an alien. But when the man continues to double down on the whole alien thing, Josuke and Okuyasu point out that the joke is starting to not be funny anymore, and Josuke even hands the guy a tissue to wipe his neck off and help with the nick in his neck. And instead of using it to wipe himself off, the man just kind of eats it. Yeah, he just kind of eats the tissue, which confirms to Josuke and Okuyasu that the guy is weird. But in case they continue onward on their way to school with the man following them, and they discover that their favorite ice cream place, which is normally open before school on Monday mornings, they discover it's actually closed, and are lamenting on the fact that they can't pick up ice cream. Only for the guy to suddenly pull out 2 frozen ice creams out of his bag, and they quickly realize that he's weird. And Josuke and Okuyasu begin talking privately to themselves, but believing that there's the possibility that this guy's a stand user, and they're not really sure whether or not he is. So Josuke decides to indulge him a little bit, trying to figure out how far that he can push him to see if he's actually a stand user, or if he genuinely is an alien. So Josuke continues to push him and asks him for some information. As it turns out, the guy introduces himself as New Mikitaka Hazekura, and he reveals that he actually left his spaceship several miles away, so he can't actually bring it with him. And that it'll take 3 days for it to show up, and which Josuke points out is likely what his watch is for, and New actually does confirm that. He confirms that his watch is to summon his ship, but at the time, even regardless, it'll take 3 days. At which point Okuyasu begins to ask where his laser gun is, if he is indeed an alien. At which point New points out that he left it on the ship because he wasn't there to try and do a hostile takeover. He's just there to see if the Earth is a nice home. At which point Okuyasu concludes that New is kind of nuts, and is curious as to whether or not he should sock him in the jaw. But Josuke decides to stay Okuyasu's hand, pointing out that they still don't know fully well if he's actually a stand user or not, because they don't really have any way to test it yet. At which point they decide to point out that if they want to believe New's claim that he's an alien, that they need to actually see some actual proof, because he bleeds red, which is characteristic of a human. And on top of that, he has no sort of alien gadgets or anything else on him, so they really have no way to actually prove if he's an alien. But then they actually get a blessing in disguise when a bunch of fire engines come by ringing their sirens. And while Josuke and Okuyasu are immediately curious as if there's a fire nearby, New has a bit of a adverse reaction to the sirens. As he reveals, apparently he's allergic to the sound of sirens, and immediately jumps into the bush to kind of try and drown out some of the noise. At which point Okuyasu concludes that the guy is crazy and decides to leave Josuke alone with him. So Josuke tries to stop Okuyasu from leaving, but realizes Okuyasu no longer has anything to do with it, and decides to help New himself, and then climbs into the bushes to go find him and see if he's all right. Only for New to actually demonstrate his ability, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I should mention, and I will get to this in a minute, but I should mention Earth, Wind, and Fire it's ambiguous as to whether or not it's a stand. I'll get to that in a minute, but in any case, New reveals that his ability, Earth, Wind, and Fire, enables him to actually transform into any object he wants. And in case in point, transforms himself into shoes so that Josuke can carry him away from the siren so that they can get to somewhere more quiet. And eventually they wind up on the roof of the school. At which point, Josuke decides to test something. And as New is actually transforming back into his human form, Josuke throws a punch, not an actual deliberate punch to punch him in the face, but he kind of fakes a punch to try and scare New and see if he's a stand user. And when New doesn't flinch or not, let alone see Crazy Diamond, Josuke realizes that he most likely is indeed an alien, and that his stand, quote unquote, is actually an alien ability. At which point, New declares that he wants to actually repay the favor for Josuke bringing him away from the place, and points out that he can transform into anything he wants to actually kind of repay the favor. And while Josuke is initially adverse to the idea, as he turns out, he actually does come up with an idea to actually get some spending money for the summer months. At which point he reveals that he's actually low on funds because he did win some lottery money. We've already established that, but apparently his mom froze the account when she found out, so he can't actually access any of it. So he's kind of a little bit SOL in terms of cash, but decides that he can actually use Mikitaka as his little standability card, as he refers to him as. He decides to ask Mikitaka if he can help him out by turning into a dice so that he can play a game of CeeLo. At which point, Mikitaka understandably asks what dice are because he doesn't know. So Josuke explains how dice work. That they have six sides. They have little divots that tell what the numbers are. And Mikitaka, after seemingly seeing what it actually is and believing he knows the concept well enough to replicate it, transforms himself into a dice, albeit a very massive one. At which point Josuke realizes that this isn't going to work and that he's way too big. At which point Mikitaka shrinks his dice form down into something smaller, and also splits himself into multiple pieces, as we've already demonstrated. But sure enough, Josuke realizes that he may be able to use this to his advantage, and then decides to go pay Rohan Kishibe a visit. So yeah, we've established up to this point that Rohan and Josuke kind of don't really like each other, and case in point, Josuke is trying to use them for some easy cash. So, but in any case, when Josuke shows up to Rohan's house and asks to play a game of CeeLo against him, Rohan is initially against the idea, and pointing out that they've never really liked each other, and has no real objection against playing against him. So he decides to take him around back and sets up a rules system for the game. Basically Josuke pulls out the dice that he presumably had Mikitaka transform into. Although Rohan is very against the idea of using Josuke's dice and uses a set of dice that he found in the house, and so Josuke puts his dice away, only to reveal that he actually swapped the dice in Rohan's house with Mikitaka's transformed dice, and that they're actually using Mikitaka as dice instead. At which point they begin to roll. At which point they roll to see who goes first. Josuke gets a higher number, so he decides to play. But in any case, Josuke begins announcing the rules out loud so Mikitaka can hear him, and just declares that he can't roll a 1 or 2 or 3, or he'll owe double of what he's already has to pay Rohan for the rules of the game. And the rule is that they have to pay 2,000 yen for everything they roll. So every chip they play, they have to roll double that. And sure enough, when he throws the dice, Mikitaka turns it into a 6, which causes Josuke to win. And Josuke begins to declare that he shouldn't be going so hard on the game, which Rohan finds immediately suspicious. And Josuke just kind of plays it up to dumb luck and tries to backpedal a little bit, which Rohan immediately notices, but then decides to take his turn. And he rolls a 1 or 2 and a 3, which causes Rohan to have to pay double of what he already owes Josuke. So yeah, Rohan begins to realize that something is fishy, and sure enough, Josuke begins panicking because he realizes that Rohan knows. So he begins panicking because he realizes that Mikitaka is kind of just playing a little bit too aggressively to help Josuke win. So Josuke is having a bit of a rough time of it. But yeah, basically this episode introduces Mikitaka, and well, truth be told, Mikitaka's weird. We've already established that he thinks he's an alien, or at least if he is an alien or not. It's kind of ambiguous as to whether or not he's an alien, because he clearly demonstrates some very weird Earth people things, but at the same time, he also has a stand. Isn't able to see other stands. Was hit by the bow and arrow. Was the bow and arrow deflected him, as opposed to hit the fact that usually when the bow and arrow hits him, it hits him clean through. So yeah, overall there are a lot of weird things about Mikitaka that don't make a whole lot of sense, and it's kind of up in the air as to whether or not he's an alien or not, which is kind of the whole theme of this episode. That Mikitaka just kind of is weird, and it's kind of ambiguous as to whether or not he's an alien. We don't know. It's possible that he may or may not be an alien, but Hirohiko Araki hasn't really confirmed or denied whether or not he's an alien, so we don't know if he's an alien or not. He might be, he might not be, we don't know. But, in any case, that's my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It helps me out because it helps me make content for you guys. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!